This course or this afternoon is going to be basically a discussion of what happens as we archive our courses and our resources. My name's Kyle. If I haven't met you before, I'm an ITF at the Belmont Mount Holly Elementary Schools. So we basically have three real components today. We're going to talk about archived courses. It's going to happen again automatically, but where do they go? I'll show you. We're going to talk about the opportunity you have to manage your material differently, more manually if you so choose. And then just the idea that you might want to manage the groups that you belong to or are an admin in also. You might want to think about that. Again, also elective. Because this topic is difficult to have any kind of artifact for, we're going to have to do a reflection today. I really don't like doing that, but there's not an archival artifact, so it's kind of tough to do that. I want to make sure that we gave the last couple of opportunities to still have a little bit of DLC credit. And I do want to remind you that this session and next week's, that's the same topic, you can attend both, are our last virtual Wednesdays for this year, as you guys turn your attention to EOGs. So the big idea today is that although courses will be accessible next year after they're archived, there's probably some steps that you may want to take in order to organize them better than just kind of letting them be archived. Okay. So I want to start off with a question. You can go to the Jamboard here. You're going to see some people have already used the Jamboard. That's from our GVA session. I've kind of declined to clear it out because I'm curious if everybody has the same feelings on it. If so, great. But I'd like to see if there's any new ones. So if you'll click on the Jamboard, and basically what I'm asking you is pretty simple. If I said, okay, Schoology is going to archive, but you might want to save some stuff, what kind of stuff is in your Schoology course that you're like, man, I really need to save this somewhere else so I have it like right at my fingertips because I just don't trust it. So go to the Jamboard, please. Just click the Jamboard. If you haven't used one before, you're going to click the little icon as it pops up, of course. And when it gets here, you're going to have the opportunity to add sticky notes, as you can see many people have done. Do move them out of the way, but you can see that I'm kind of piling them up. So over here on the side is a sticky note. It's the middle button. Well, it's the fourth button down. You just type in whatever you want, hit save. They're going to stack up right here. So please do politely move yours out of the way of everyone else without, deleting theirs or something. What kind of stuff is in your course that you I want to make sure, Kyle, that I get that saved because I just don't trust it. I want to make sure it's somewhere I know where to, and that I can locate it next year. Let's give you a couple minutes to do that. I'm just going to give a minute to do. I'll do 2 minutes to do that. What kind of stuff's in your Schoology that you would be upset if you lost it and you want to know today where you could put it? Okay. Okay. If you already see it on here, please go ahead and add it again because you can notice the assessments is a big pile over here because they take a little bit of time to make, right? Test and quizzes, okay. Okay. Sorry, I wasn't trying to tug it with you. Okay, so we've got some videos popping up, pages with like really specific directions. It looks like is what we're talking about here on this blue one. Yeah, I want to be as paperless as possible, so I've got to figure out a place to put all this mess. I get you. Parent informational videos, playlist and test. So the good news here is, remember, we're talking specifically Schoology, right? So if you've made a playlist and it's a Google slide probably, or maybe a Google Doc. It's going to get saved in Google, right? But if you've on your playlist linked to, say, an assessment in Schoology, that link will get broken. Does that make sense? Because the course that there's my little notification. Okay, sorry, 2 minutes is up. The course that you have this year obviously won't be the same one next year. So the link on the playlist will be broken, but the playlist will be saved. You would just need to update the links, right? Does that make some sense? The digital libraries, I'm betting that's in like a Google Slide or a Google Drawing. So that's in Google, you're good. The landing pages are also probably made in a drawing, I would imagine. So that's good. You would just need to add it to your new course. So we're kind of thinking about it like, I know that when I reopened my classroom each year, I had like a to-do list of every year I make this stuff, a folder for every kid for their portfolios, which dwindled as it went on, right? I wanted to have a couple of anchor charts on the walls, but not too much. I wanted to have a couple of bulletin boards set up, but not too many. That's kind of how we're looking at Schoology. My lesson plans are still in that Google Doc, right? But I do like this guy, the top blue one, saying, but it's very specific. And I know it's just typed on a page, but man, it took me a while. We can definitely fix that. The assessments we will definitely fix because those live specifically and only in Schoology. Now, when we look at Fluency Passages, somebody typed, I would assume the Fluency Passage is probably a PDF, which is probably also in Google Drive, right? But if you've embedded that in a page and you've got like some instructions around it and you've got like a whole assignment built around it, then we need to think about how to save that. So I do want to continue pointing out that we're only talking about Schoology, right? Everything else is the same as it's been. Okay, so I'm going to try to help you and guide you through some just wanted to make sure you thought through this before, it's more trouble than it should be. Okay, so let's talk about archiving. I hope this makes everybody feel better because I've asked the Schoology lady. That's what we call her. Liz is her name. I've asked Liz a bunch of times. She's really sick of me emailing because I'm like, this sounds too easy, Liz. I don't think this is the way it's going to work. And she swears this is the way it's going to work. And everything else I've found online corroborates it. So here's what's going to happen. On May 26th or May 27th, okay, the last day with students is May 26th, your courses are automatically going to archive. They're going to go away. Why is it May 26th? Because it's based on PowerSchool, right? So school ended May 26th. So it's gone. Now, when I say gone, they aren't deleted. They're archived. And here's what that looks like. I have a couple of archived courses so I can show you. When you go to courses on May 26th or 7th, and the reason I'm sketchy about the day is simply because there's a 24 to 30 hour, they said, buffer, a little grace period there that it just kind of takes it to process, I guess. So it'll happen somewhere in that span. I would imagine it might happen at slightly different times for each person, but following the last day of school, okay? This course menu will be virtually empty, okay? What you will see is your sandbox course that I would recommend keeping. So if you deleted it, then I can show you how to re-add one. You'll be able to do that after the fact too, if you needed to. And I hope that you didn't leave the Getting Started course. Now, if you're here today, obviously you probably took the Getting Started course you were supposed to at the beginning of the year, right? So please don't leave that, because what the ITFs would like to do is we would like to add new content to that whenever it's needed, as changes have come in Schoology, updates and whatever might happen, new courses, stuff like this could be added there eventually. We want you to stay in that course because we would rather you stay in that one course than every time we have training, make you join a new one. Like sometimes trainers would use Google Classroom that way, right? They give you a code for every training and you've got like 50 Google Classrooms. We want you to have one so it doesn't clutter your screen, because we know how annoying it is to have this cluttered. Okay, but on that day, this will be decluttered because everything will get archived except for those two courses. So here's where they'll go. You'll click on My Courses at the top right, where I know many of you do GVA, so you're used to seeing just a crazy list of courses here, right? But you'll notice that I now have a button called Current and Archived. And it simply toggles to Archived, and there your archived courses will sit. That's it. So if you wanted to get something out of an archived course next year, you could. And you could leave right now and say, okay, thanks, Kyle, see you later. But if you're anything like me, man, my classroom in May, it does not look like I think it's going to look in August. It is messed up. There's stuff all over the place. And, if I'm being honest, when I pack up in May, maybe every single thing doesn't go where I'm going to be able to find it perfectly in August. I'm kind of like trying to get up out of Dodge, you know what I mean? So maybe it would be smart to save some of the stuff, not all of it, but some of it somewhere a little more organized if you have time to do it. Again, if you don't have time and you're like, forget it, Kyle, I'm just going to leave it this way, you're totally cool, and that's okay. Okay. So if you do nothing, here's what you'll do next year. You'll be able to click on one of these courses. These happen to be Schoology training courses, so that's why I have them, and they're in here that, whoever the instructor was let them archive. What you would do is this famous, gear that we use all the time. You'll be able to come here in an archived course, and you'll be able to hit copy to courses for a whole folder or one item, and you'll be able to copy it to a course, to a specific folder, just like you do now from probably resources if you share resources with someone else. Okay. So that's the good news. The bad news is, again, just trying to look out for you. Kyle in May is not going to, Kyle in August is not going to remember where May Kyle put anything. That's my fear. Okay. There's a couple of ways to help you navigate that. One, if you haven't used this before, is going to be a godsend once you see this full course. You have this little guy right here. It's a little drop down that I never use right now, but I certainly will. It says all materials. So if there's like an assessment that was in your math course last year or this year, and you're looking for it next year, you can click and filter just assessments. And it will pull out, and this course doesn't have any, but it will pull out a list of assessments or assignments. This is assignments. It'll pull out a list of just those. So it at least narrows it down, filters it a little bit. Okay. So that's an option. So if you leave it completely as is, that's what you would be able to do. Okay. So that's the archive portion. So you will have access to the courses. Students won't be able to submit any work or anything. If you are a person that's been putting a bunch of grades in here, like GPA folks that I know are in here, you can put grades in here after it's archived. From what I've read, that just sounds awfully strange to me. No one's going to see those grades. And I know that you guys end up having to put the end grade in PowerSchool anyway, right? So I would probably try to get that done the 26th or early morning the 27th, if at all possible, just to make life easier, just to avoid any possible issue, okay? What I've read says there won't be an issue, but, I'm just going to hedge my bets on that one. Excuse me. Does anybody have questions about just the archived portion? Because, again, that's all that's definitely going to happen to everyone. Okay, so in our last GVA session, some people had questions about what happens to attached Google items. I haven't been able to locate what occurs when a Google assignment with a Google template attached, and by that I mean the one that gets copied out to all your students. I haven't been able to find what happens when that gets archived, and I don't have anything in these courses that they did that with, so I don't know. But I do know that when you share something from your course to a group, we know that it does remove the Google file, okay? So be prepared for that. Again, it doesn't mean the Google file's gone. It just means it's not attached to the assignment anymore. I don't know that that's going to happen, but I can imagine that it would, because it does in most other cases, right? Anytime I move a Google assignment, it always detaches that document. Christine says, but if I've saved it in resources, like badges even, will it be safe? Anything in groups and resources is safe, okay? So the only reason a course, Christine, gets archived is because it has a date on it. And one of the annoying things about putting things in resources that you've probably experienced is when something goes in resources and you try to put somewhere else, you've got to tell it a date again, because every time you put it in resources, it strips the dates and all the categories of the grade books and all that junk off. In this case, that's a great thing because without a date, there's no expiration. So the course doesn't go away. I mean, the course goes away, but the stuff outside of courses don't. So you should be completely fine with that stuff. Yeah, no problem. All right, so let's say then you're like, okay, that makes me feel better, Kyle. I'm glad about that, but I'm more organized than that, and I want to try something else. Okay, so here's your options. If you go to resources, and this is part 2. If I flip back to the thing here, this will be covered in this video. Okay, make sure I've hit all this. Yeah, awesome. Okay, so yep, perfect. So if I go back to resources, you'll notice that when you come to resources, you probably are used to going straight to group, right? And you probably have like a grade level group, or you're going to the elementary academic services group, and you're usually taking stuff from this to put into your course. So you've gotten probably pretty used to clicking on something and doing like add to course, right? So now let's think about that in reverse. If I want to make sure that something isn't attached to a course anymore, and I want to pull it into my resources so I can just go to resources next year and not fool with any archive courses, I can do that. I have a couple of options. I could add it to those groups that I belong to, like my grade level one. I can do that. And yes, as Christine said, if it's already there, it's there. But there's also a personal option. It looks like a file folder box. And what you can do there, and I kind of like this idea, kind of like it a lot, is you could make what's called collections there, but they're basically folders. You'll see a file box up here at the top left where I'm circling. You'll just click that file box and you can name it. I would suggest naming 4 collections. You can do it however you like, but I would suggest 4. And I would have an ELA, a math, a science, and a social studies, because those would match my 4 courses that I'm really worried about grading next year, right? Or submitting work to next year. Homeroom if you want one, right? If you put stuff like those getting started videos for parents in there, if you want to hold those in there, that'd be easy to find next year, I think, though. You just make collections. Inside those collections, you can, I have nothing, but inside those collections, maybe you have a folder that goes, instead of it being week of September or whatever, you have a folder that says, this is about, in my case, adding fractions. And so just thinking about next year, right? Not this year. Next year, the week of whatever is going to be less important, right? Because you're going to probably, hopefully, have the kids in front of you, right? So if they're in front of you, your folder, your module, your unit might not last a week. It might last 6 days, might last 2 days, might last 14, right? So instead of it being by week, which is hard to reuse year to year, you might elect to make a folder. You might elect to make a folder that is based on topic or even standard. I kind of went with both. Okay, completely up to you, just an idea. Okay, and what you'll do is you'll go to the course and you'll find that item that you want to add to a folder. Again, I wouldn't sit and go through every single thing, but if there's an assessment in there that took me a while to make, something that's really important and time consuming, I would do. You can do entire folders, you can, just like you do for groups, or you can do individual items. So if I wanted to take this entire folder and stick it in my math collection, I just hit the gear, I hit save to resources, and tell it which collection to go to. That's it. If I'd rather save it to that group that I always save it to, or just organize it differently than I have throughout the year, the groups are listed in the same spot. So it's really easy to do. I also want you to notice that it says save copy. So even if it's something the kids are working on right now, it's making a copy of it anyhow. So it doesn't hurt anything going on right now. So as a matter of practice next year, or to finish this year, I might save stuff to my resources as I go. Okay, you don't have to, but I might elect to. Okay, all right. The other option you have is, and I don't recommend this one, is you could hit options and save the entire course to your resources. That's going to be the whole course organized in all these folders you've got this year. It's basically like taking the stuff on your desk and slotting it into a file drawer. I'm like, it's there at least. I didn't lose anything. But it's not going to be too fun to look through next year. It's also kind of the same as just leaving it in the archives. So I don't recommend doing that. Okay. But those are your options. Once they're in a personal collection, you can still share them. You'll notice there's a share button right here, and I can actually add any other Schoology user in our county to it, and they can get to it just like me. Okay. I'm going to run get my power cord before I lose the energy. Be right back. Apologize for that. Old Bessie doesn't keep a charge very long. So once I do that, I can still share stuff out of my personal folder here, or my personal collection here, to anybody I like, kind of like a Google Drive. Okay. So that's our second option. That's how to save stuff in resources if I want to. Does anybody have any questions about that part? Again, that type of file management is completely up to you. Nobody's dictating that at all. It's just like your choice of keeping track of things in your Google Drive. Ms. Hurley's asking if we'll be able to access Schoology at all over the summer. Schoology should be on over the summer because it's not going to be connected to PowerSchool. So the connection that pushes your new courses from PowerSchool to Schoology will be turned off. So you won't see like your courses and your rosters and stuff for next year until that's reconnected, probably into August, into early August. You can log in to Schoology over the summer. It's just you won't have any courses to work in except for your sandbox. So you're right, Ms. Hurley. The sandbox is there, and that's why we want to make sure it's there. Your question might be, how did you keep the sandbox there? We went in and changed the sandbox's reporting periods to end in like 2022 and 2023 so that they just don't get archived. So they're just constantly open, as is the Getting Started course. Ms. Sexton says, can we log in from our personal devices? For sure. I don't recommend trying to log in from an iPad or any kind of tablet. The app is just not great, to be honest with you, and it doesn't allow the same kind of editing in all the different types of materials in Schoology. But you can log in. You would just need to go to gaston.schoology.com instead of schoology.com. You know, the bookmark is on our Gaston devices for us, but just remember it's gaston.schoology instead of just Schoology. But yeah, it'll work fine. In fact, summer school's using it some, so it has to be left on. Okay. All right. The last thing, and then we'll take questions and you know, really specific questions if you have them about kind of judgment calls on what to move and what not to move, or groups. And this is a little less important even. You might belong to a bunch of groups in Schoology right now, and you might not. So if you click on groups, you're going to want to keep the Elementary Academic Services group, obviously. And if you're GVA, you're probably ought to stay in the GVA group for a good while longer. We're going to ask you to join the Gaston Digital group next year because we're going to start putting information and news there instead of Workplace, so it's all in one spot. But anyway, let's say you're in a PLC this year or in a group this year and you decide to move schools, or maybe you're GVA and you don't want to be GVA next year, or maybe you're GVA and you move grade levels, or whatever reason there may be, right? That you're looking at a group and you're like, I'm out. Okay. If you leave the group, you leave the resources attached to the group. So you can move the resources from the group to your own resources, copy them over while you're in there, or you can certainly stay in the group. I'm really addressing this in this particular session because if you're in a group, I actually want you to make sure, just out of politeness, that you have a conversation with anybody before you remove them. So for example, I'm in this 3rd grade GVA PLC. I may not need to be next year. But if I go to members, you may know that you all have to be admins in order to add stuff to the group. So you see there's 30 admins to this. So any one of these people could come in here and remove me. And suddenly, and that's fine, except for I would lose access to all the resources. So if I didn't save them for myself, because I'm like, they're there, I'm all good, I would lose them all. So I would just ask you that before you leave a group by removing yourself, or before you remove someone else, that you just hit them up in an email and say, hey, I'm trying to clean up the groups. We want to make sure the right people are in here that are in our grade level now or our PLC now. Do you need this stuff or not? Because there's no harm in leaving them in there, right? If anything, you can collaborate with more people, which is great. So please just be aware of that before you do any kind of maintenance. And do think about that when you do it to your Google Drive folders too. Because the same thing happens there, right? If I remove somebody from a shared folder, they lose access to all that stuff. So I just want to be aware that that's going to happen. Okay. So that's actually it, guys. I feel like it's pretty good news. Nothing major is going to happen to your Schoology courses. They're just going to move a tab over so that they don't clutter your screen quite the same. I had read stories of courses just piling up year after year after year. So I've been kind of reading about this a lot, and I'm very pleasantly surprised that that's all that's going to happen. Now, I will say, keep in mind that this is going to happen every year. So the archive tab is going to start looking pretty wild. It's going to have a bunch of courses in there after next year, right? It's just going to keep getting longer, and the current one won't. So I wouldn't bank on using the archived method of filing things forever, because then I could foresee you saying, gosh, did I use this lesson plan last year or the year before last? So do be careful about it. But I understand this year that you may not want to go digging through your entire course and moving it to resources. So with the rest of our time, and I'm not going to keep you the whole half an hour extra time because this is a short topic. Does anybody have any specific questions that can help you or maybe the entire group about what we can do with certain types of content? Looking back at the Jamboard, and I think we can address most of this by either leaving it in the archive or putting it in resources. Does anybody have any questions about things linked together or something like that? I'm trying to practice my wait time, Miss Sexton. I do think a lot of times these sessions feel so fast. I want to make sure I had plenty of time to answer anybody's questions, because I know if you told me my files could be moved around, I'd be pretty anxious about it. So didn't want to overcomplicate it. And to be honest, when we scheduled this, we didn't know what was going to happen. So I'm very pleasantly surprised there's not a required process for us. Yeah, Ms. Summers, so pretty much, right? So the only time I would really worry, and this is just my opinion, okay? But the only time I'd worry about something in Google is, when I go and I embed the Google slide in my course on a page or an assignment or something, I probably do type some directions around it, right? Kids, this week we're working on this topic, da da da. So is that worth like worrying about next year? Probably not, because it's probably very specific to that week we were working on that playlist or that learning plan. So I feel like I would do just as good of a job as in Google, modifying it in Google, fixing the links, and embedding it in a new page or assignment next year, because again, the text around is going to be different anyhow. That's what I think. I know that a lot of you in here are very experienced high-end Schoology users, so if there's anything I'm not thinking about, please point it out. I want to know. I could see something like the how-to videos for parents. If it's the videos that we sent you from YouTube, then we're going to leave them there. But I could understand that if you've already put them in there and you've already got like a parent folder, there's no need to recreate that, right? So I could definitely see copying that whole folder into my next homeroom next year and just calling it a day. That would be great. And if there's updates that parents need, we're going to make more videos for you, so you don't have to worry about it. So I'm going to give you the reflection because I don't want to keep you here listening to the crickets. I'm going to give you the reflection to do, but I'm going to stay in here till 2, and I'll just at least have the room up. So if you have specific questions, if you want to start looking at your courses and just tinkering while I'm here, we can talk it out and see what happens. I can test some stuff and see if I'm able to throw things in an archive just to see what happens to make sure, because I'd rather break my stuff than yours. So let me get you the reflection and we'll do it that way, okay? So at the bottom, some reminders. Again, the courses are going to archive just after the last day of school within a few hours. You will have access to them. The items and resources and groups are preserved, but do think about managing the groups that you might be in, especially the ones that you are considering kicking someone else out of, thinking you're helping them. You just need to let them know. So here's what I want you to do. Because it's kind of tough to do an artifact about file management, I just chose to do a simple celebration reflection. So if you'll click on the Flipgrid link, and I'll put it in the chat right now. There you go. If you'll click that, it's going to ask you to log in with Google. You can do that. And then just click record a response. And I'm just curious, tell us about a celebration, a lesson you learned, or tech tip you learned this year. I know it doesn't have specifically to do with archiving, but I don't know how to talk about celebration of archiving. So I'm not sure. So if you can do that, then we'll call that your artifact for the day, and I'll make sure that you get your DLC credit. This is admittedly a bit of a stretch, so please don't expect it to be like this every time. It really can be. Okay, so all you'll do is you'll hit record a response or the big camera. Oh, Lord. And you'll just hit the dot in the middle and record your video, and then you'll stop it, and you'll see buttons to post the video. Okay, you only have 90 seconds. So I'm going to hush so you can record if you need to right now, and I'll wait any questions popping up in the chat. Once you finish recording, you can leave and have a nice day, or you can hang out and fire away at your questions.